welcome to Change the Culture, a podcast dedicated to preventing and reducing interpersonal violence through empowerment self-defense. Studies have shown that 1 in 3 women, 1 in 6 men, and 1 in 5 children experience interpersonal violence in their lifetime, and isolation caused by the pandemic has increased incidence of domestic violence by more than 30%. And this is why we're here. My name is Annie Orenstein, and today on the show, we have Wendi Dragonfire. Wendi Dragonfire is an internationally recognized teacher, trainer, consultant, and writer on martial arts, self-defense, and empowerment. A 9th Dan in Shuri Ryu karate and a 3rd-degree black belt in modern Arnis, Wendi organizes karate and self-defense seminars on weekends and weekends on a regular basis, and has more than 5 decades of experience teaching. During her years of training, she has taught, trained, and advised a great number of people and organizations how to learn to defend themselves, stand up for themselves in daily life, expand their repertoire as self-defense teachers, and deepen their knowledge of empowerment self-defense. She has brought martial arts and empowerment through self-defense to many marginalized communities, including but not limited to women and girls, people with different abilities, as well as multicultural and racial groups, as well as the LGBTQ+ community. She also practices healing touch, a form of energy-based therapy. Welcome, Wendi. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
So tell our listeners a bit about you, where you grew up, where you live now.
Okay, I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I lived there I lived there till I graduated high school. Then I did some other traveling and stuff, but not important. I've been living since 1984 in the Netherlands, which is where I am now, which is where I will die when the time comes, not for a while.
Wow. So wonderful. So share your journey with us, how you came to karate, self-defense, empowerment self-defense.
Okay. Well, I was going to university in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and I was part of a women's group. And there was a karate and self-defense school in the city I was in La Crosse, and it was run by a woman. And one of the women in our women's group was already training there, and the teacher offered us a great deal to do self-defense for the rest of the school year for very little money. And I went to one class, and it was like being struck by lightning. I thought, I got to do this for the rest of my life, and I've got to bring this. At the time, I've got to bring this to women. Since then, I've got to bring this to everyone who needs it.
That's amazing. And it's brought you all over the world since then.
It has. My favorite place to go. My favorite place to go is Israel. I haven't been. Yeah, no, I'm still on my record of every 2 years I've been there. I don't think it's going to happen this year, but the last time I was there was, the last time I was there was I got home 2 weeks before lockdown.
Wow.
In the pandemic, yeah.
Wow, that is extremely challenging time, and now you're back on the scene and traveling again already.
Well, I've been active the whole time because through Esd Global, I'm a mentor, and I'm now on my 2nd mentor group. It's the mixed gender group that trained in Prague, and they're wonderful. At this point, we've only had contact through WhatsApp, but as of the 19th of this month, we will be having monthly meetings on Zoom.
Amazing.
So it's very exciting. Yeah. But I've been really lucky because the people who did that course connected with me long before they even got to Prague, and we've been talking for a long time. And I know I've known some of them from other teaching experiences or traveling or whatever. So yeah, it's very exciting. And thank goodness for Judith Sedikman, who founded Esd Global, and who, as I believe, there are now 54 countries involved. I'm not positive, but she organizes trainings to teach teachers so that where they have their trainings, people can become independent and can start teaching in their own communities. And it's really quite amazing. And I don't know very many people. Oh, actually, I don't know anyone else who has the kind of push and ability to manufacture out of nothing incredible things like ESD Global. So my heart goes out to Judith. I met her for the first time when she went to her first National Women's Martial Arts Special Training, which is an organization in the United States of which I'm one of the founders. And I met her there. I heard, oh, there's women here from Israel. And I was at, where? And it was Jill Shames, who's in Israel, and also Judith Sidickman. And I ran and found them. And they, within, I think it wasn't even a year before they invited me to come and teach there. And so I've taught lots of different stuff there. And Judith also came and hung out with me here and stayed with me and trained with me and did a workshop here for my students. And I mean, I don't know how to say how much of an inspiration and a gift she is to the universe.
Yep, I agree. The CEO and founder of what's now My Power, which started out as El Halev and now branched off as well into My Power, our social tech startup company in Jerusalem. It's really amazing to work with such empowered individuals. And I have this opportunity through the Change the Culture podcast to meet women like you did, who are so dedicated and on the ground running to make the world a safer place, which is what you've been doing day in, day out for the last 50 years. It's unreal. It's incredible. And I'm so honored to have you here with me. And I would love to, if we could start at the foundation, 2 questions for you is really what is interpersonal violence and what is empowerment self-defense, or what comes first?
Well, interpersonal violence, I think the name says it. It's between people who know each other.
Right.
So it's family violence. It's
interactional.
Yeah,
things that happen.
It's battered women. It's abused children. It's there's a physical aspect to it. There's also a sexual aspect to it. Not everybody is sexually abused who's physically abused, and as a result deals with violence. I myself am very happy that although I was abused as a child, I was not sexually abused. I'm happy about that every single day of my life. But that certainly, I always knew from the day that I became aware of it that it was not my fault. And so pretty much from that day on, I was fighting for a better understanding of violence and how to stop perpetrators. So I was pretty young. I was about 5, maybe younger.
Wow. So, and you knew from early on that this is what you wanted to do.
Well, I didn't know there was anything that I could want. I just knew that what was being done to me was not my fault. And that, and I just basically told everybody I ever met, every adult, and nobody intervened. And so when I got to a point of understanding that there was something I could do, I became the intervener. And when I was like 11, I intervened between when bullies were bullying kids on the playground and things like that. I mean, I've always been an intervener. So,
wow. Yeah. Well, that's important. People need we need more people like you in the world, because people are definitely afraid to step up for themselves and also afraid to step up for other people. They're afraid to get involved. They're afraid to bring justice into the world. And through learning the tools, the ideas, the language, the concepts of empowerment and self-defense, I feel that we create more of a responsibility to one another as individuals. And could you share more about how ESC was founded?
Well, before I get there, I want to say a little bit more. You asked me how I got started, and I got started in this women's group that became a women's self-defense group. But 3 weeks into that, the head of the karate organization, and my karate style, came and visited our school, and there was just an immediate click. And I saw him. I didn't see him for a while because he lived in Arizona and I lived in Wisconsin. And then I saw him, and he asked me what I wanted, and I said, well, if I could have my choice, I'd want to come and I'd want to move where you are and train with you full time. And he said, well, what's stopping you? And I said, nothing. So I moved 3,000 miles to Arizona, which I hate, and trained with him 7 days a week, 8, 10, 12 hours a day. And what I loved about him, among other things, is that he always emphasized the self-defense aspect of what we did. So that unlike, even though we also did sport, because he was the head of the biggest martial arts organization in the world at the time, so sport karate was important to us. He didn't believe in just sport. We also did self-defense, and we did it a lot. We interpreted what we were doing a lot. So I will, and his name was Robert Trias. For any of you who know anything about martial arts, it's a familiar name. And I was one of his first generation students. He was my teacher. And I will always treasure what I learned from him, among other things. I'm certainly physically, but among other things on a psychological, emotional level, because he really taught me that not only was it okay to stand up for myself, which as a multi woman, it's not something that we usually get praised for, and he praised me for that. And especially as a multi Jewish woman, which and he encouraged me to stand up for myself and to stand up for what was right. And so that he just encouraged me to continue on the path I was already on, because the greatest influence in my life was the Black Panthers and the civil rights movement. I learned all of my activism stuff from the Black Panthers in the early days, in my early teens, and I was on the streets demonstrating. And in Milwaukee, they didn't have open housing. I was demonstrating for open housing, sometimes with my mother marching. And of course, I was active in anti-Vietnam War movement and the women's movement and the LGBTQ movement. So I put in a lot of miles, and eventually the anti-nuclear proliferation and you name it. So I was an activist from a very young age, and I was influenced in how to be an activist, especially by the Black Panther movement and the civil rights movement.
Wow, what a journey.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
I was very lucky. Very lucky. Yeah.
And can you share with us, again, how empowerment self-defense became empowerment self-defense? Because you were there from the very beginning.
Yes. Well, it started out, we, as women in karate, a lot of us were women in karate, and we knew that there were women who needed something like self-defense, but they weren't going to commit to what anyone who does martial arts knows is basically a lifetime commitment. So we figured out we need to put together some kind of self-defense, like short course that gives people the information they need in a short time, so that they at least have some survival skills. So, and there were a lot of women involved: Nadia Telsey, Annie Edelman, Carol Middleton. I mean, there were a lot of people, and I'm sorry that I've missed people. Nancy Lanou. I've missed a lot of really important people in that process. But we started out teaching self-defense for women, because the men who started teaching self-defense, a lot of them had martial arts schools, and they were teaching it to try and get money into their schools because the martial arts wasn't paying enough. So it was a good way to get a big chunk of money, do a course, 15 women show up, they pay $100 or whatever. And there's a nice little nest egg. So, but they were teaching really, really bad stuff, really bad stuff. And the worst was, I got a letter from a woman after there's a photography book called Eye to Eye Portraits of Lesbians, and it's by Joan E. Byron. And she photographed all sorts of women doing unconventional jobs, or jobs that in the past were more men's jobs than women's jobs, quote unquote. And she took a photo of me, which is a beautiful photo, I have to say. And somebody who bought the book, and she put all of our addresses in the back of the book so people could contact us if they wanted to. And this woman wrote me a letter and said, I was attacked, I was raped. It was an attempted rape. He tried to rape me. I kicked him in the nuts. He fell to the ground, writhing in pain. I ran to the police. I got the police to come. He was still on the ground, writhing in pain. They arrested him. He was convicted, went to jail. And I decided, now I got to get some skills, because that was successful, but I didn't know what I was doing. Now I need to figure out what I'm doing and how to do it better. So she was at a self-defense class taught by a man, and he went around the circle, what made you come here? And she told her story, and he said, that's ridiculous. You should never have done that. And that was a terrible, I'm like, that was a terrible defense and this and that. And I'm like, how can stopping the rape, injuring him enough so that the police have time to pick him up, getting him arrested, getting him convicted, and getting him in jail, how is that not a good thing? And his response, what he said to her was, you should never kick a man in the nuts because it could escalate. Well, it didn't escalate. It ended.
Right.
And it might, certainly it's a fabulous target. We all know that. We all also should know that you don't want to kick, you don't want to go straight in. You want to go in between the legs and go up. So you really get the balls, just in case you don't know that. I call it up from under, or actually what I usually call it is testicles to the tonsils.
Yeah.
So, so that when she told me that, I was like, oh my God, this woman did this perfect defense. And she went to a self-defense class, and this is the response she got. That's the reason we started really having those kind of answers that men were giving was the reason we started having to really change the
language.
Yeah, well, and change the culture.
Change the culture.
Yeah.
And yes, we talked the last time we had a chance to catch up. You shared with us about the 5 principles that ESD is based upon: is think, yell, run, fight, and tell. And it's so important to this example of what she did. It was almost instinctual. It was instinctual. Like she knew that this is what had to be done in the moment. And it's like, I want to just like clap and wish everyone would know what to do when they're in these compromising situations, man or woman, or wherever we are in the world, that we do have the right to defend ourselves, to stop things in its tracks when we can, and to think first, yell, get help, run when we get away, fight, and tell. And this woman told her story, and the telling part for me when I think about tell is how we recover from the trauma and we stop
Exactly.
Maybe you want to share more about it.
It's not just telling somebody; it's doing whatever you need to do to recover, which can absolutely include therapy. But Judith, who I've talked about already, Judith, because it's not always easy to remember if you don't have it written down. It's the 5-finger principle. It's not always easy to remember. Think, yell, run, fight, tell. And Judith made it easy. She goes, think, yell, run, fight, tell. Think, yell, run, fight, tell.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that way it's
Mhm.
almost impossible to forget. And
Yeah.
and that's the creativeness of Unique Civic Men right there.
Yeah, you can catch it on our YouTube channel, on the My Power YouTube channel. You gotta think, yeah.
Run,
So
fight,
you gotta
tell.
think, yeah, run, fight, tell. And it's really to ingrain it in us that
Yeah.
it's not that we're gonna jump in and go into a fight right away. We want to
Right.
avoid that, de-escalate, or get out.
Use
So
our
we can't.
voices.
Use our voices, yeah.
Yeah.
So you shared with us one ESD success story,
Yeah.
and you also
My other one that
tell me more. Tell
All right.
us.
I have a friend of mine. You know, I was in the 70s. We still hitchhiked. I don't advise it now, and I wouldn't do it anymore. But we used to hitchhike. So a friend of mine was hitchhiking and got a ride. And one of the things we used to tell each other is, don't get in the car with more than one man unless you're getting in the back seat and it's four-door and you have your own way of getting out of the car.
Mm.
So she was in the car. It was a two-door, but she was the only other person in the car. And the guy pulled over, and she said, "Why are you pulling over?" He said, "Well, I just have, who knows why? He could have. I don't remember what he said, but he could easily have said, I have to take a piss." So the next thing he did is pull out a gun, and he said, "Get out of the car." And he started walking her into the woods with a gun to her.
Wow.
And which is a very scary situation. I mean, that is one of the scariest things you can think of. And after walking a little bit, she turned around and she said, "You better be prepared to either kill me or die, because if you continue this, one of us is not leaving this woods alive." And he just sort of went, and turned around and left. So she was stuck. She was stuck on the side of a highway and had to hitchhike again, but at least she was alive and had stopped that. I mean, clearly he was going to rape her. That was the clear message. Yeah.
Wow, that's so scary. But she
very
got out
scary.
of that situation.
Absolutely. And one of the things that seems to be a common thread through a lot of success stories is standing up for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Is not being afraid to fight back in some way.
Mm-hmm.
In that way, we say think yell, but yell doesn't have to be yelling. It can also just be talking. Right. And in that sense, she got out of it by the second principle, which is yelling, and by talking, and by making it clear to him that if he wasn't prepared to actually kill her, he better step back, because she would kill him. And he stepped back, and it's just amazing and wonderful that worked. So I love that.
Was it after a class that she had taken, or was it?
No, she wasn't a martial artist or a self-defense person or anything.
Wow.
She was a friend of mine, and I knew her. Probably the thing that made her more prepared is she was a Native woman. She was a Native American woman. So she had been harassed, and the statistics for violence against Native American women in the United States is hugely higher than for other people, for other women. So, I'm sure that her whole life she'd been thinking about, what would I do? How can I do it? But she'd never taken a self-defense class or anything. She just did it. She did what was necessary.
Wow. And it's hard, and it's hard to grasp that there are so many communities that are challenged with interpersonal violence on a more stronger level, meaning that they're all around the world. We have just so many different, I don't know if to say underprivileged, but we don't want to walk around being victims. So that's it's so important. We have to get this message out there. So as quickly as continue to train and to get on the ground.
Well, even if you're not training, how you carry yourself. If you don't carry yourself as a victim, you're already much less likely to be a victim. If you stand up tall and you look around and clearly you know where you are and what's around you, your chances of not being attacked are just much greater, even if you don't train. So, you don't, it's not, the message is not, you've got to take a self-defense class. The message is, you've got to be empowered, and a self-defense class will help you get that.
Right. And we'll share, hopefully in the coming podcast, we're going to be sharing more success stories and more stories of how women empower themselves, and men and whoever's listening to step up and step into their voice and to put a stop to prevent this interpersonal violence. And I want to ask you, Wendi, tell us about Healing Touch.
Okay, but before I do that,
Sure.
I just want to say that Anat, who works at LLM and Esd Global in Israel, is compiling success stories.
Oh,
So yeah, she's compiling success stories. So that's going to be great. Healing Touch is a energy-based healing art, and one of the things that's important to know is that martial arts is also energy-based. So, and self-defense too. You're using the person's energy against them. Well, in Healing Touch, you're not using their energy against them, but you're still being very aware of energy and how energy works and how energy moves, and how to keep energy flowing, so there's not blocks where people end up with injury. Sometimes energy stops there and they're injured, and try to get that energy moving again. So it's, and Healing Touch is energy-based healing that does that. And it's a complete system of healing. I mean, there's 5 levels of healing of class, and then there's a 6th level, which is the teacher class, to become a teacher, which I did do. I went through all 6 levels. And what's really important is that you learn ways to make it happen. And one year I was at special training, which is the National Women's Martial Arts Federation event, and I was teaching us a healing touch class, and we were doing one of the practices there, and we were doing it 2 people on one, because otherwise we didn't have enough tables and whatever. But we didn't have enough people either, so my partner and I just put clothes down on a table as if it was a person, and we agreed on what person it was going to be. It was somebody we both knew, and we did the whole healing, the whole practice that we did that time. It was one of the techniques, and that evening I was sitting talking with Judith and a couple other people, and my phone rang, and I answered it, and it was a friend of mine, and she said, "God, Wendi, I had shoulder pain. Like, I know you know that because you were working on me at the gay games, but it's gone. I don't know what happened. It just around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it just started to get better. And by 4, it was like gone." And I'm like, "Yes, we were doing Healing Touch on you." So,
and not in the same room.
She was not in the same room. She didn't even know about it. She didn't know we were doing it. I mean, I had already gotten permission from her earlier to work on it, because we don't do anything without permission, which is very important. That's true in self-defense too. We don't just grab somebody. We always have permission from our partners and to practice.
I remember that in Impact, before every engagement, we were asked, and it's a form of respect, and just, are you ready? Are we ready to go?
Yeah. And also, it's just having permission makes it's a practice. It's not an attack. So it helps people not to overreact.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. So I bless you to heal many people through Healing Touch, and I'm sure people can learn more about it on your website.
And what I like about it is that all the work I do is energy based. It doesn't matter if it's trying to de-escalate a situation, or if it's trying to support a person, or if it's trying to help somebody. Because really, healing touch is not about me healing the other person. It's about helping them heal themselves. So, everything that I'm doing, it's just all self-defense too. I'm not stopping them from being attacked. I'm helping them stop it themselves. I'm helping them become empowered to take care of themselves.
Wow.
And that's all energy. It's all about energy.
Wow. And so that's the healing part is after a trauma, let's say. But when we go, not necessarily.
No, I mean, we're healing all the time. And, and I mean, we certainly focus more on healing after something's happened.
Right.
But I don't know anybody who hasn't had to deal with some kind of trauma and worked on it from whatever age that they were able to, and so it's it's sort of like breathing. We don't think about it, we just do it.
Right, just do it.
And with healing and you all don't know why we're laughing, but we'll tell you later. With healing, it's like breathing. It's just part of who you are. And there are people who don't, there are people who aren't paying attention to what their body's telling them, that aren't paying attention to what they need. But there are also a lot of people who are really paying attention. And sometimes not paying attention doesn't matter. They still help themselves.
It's a beautiful process, because also not only are you teaching to raise you're teaching people to speak up so others can listen. It's also listening to our own voices and what we need inside. Yeah. So that's a wonderful process. And I'd love for you to share a little bit more about the other courses that you offer.
Let's see. I offer cultural communications, and because communication is one of the most important parts of everything we do. If we're not communicating with each other, we're probably not going to get. We're probably going to have problems. And if when we start to feel a problem coming, we can immediately address it and communicate about it, we can probably de-escalate the situation so that we don't have to go to run or fight.
So that's Intercultural, Social, Physical, and Mental Empowerment course. Is that? We have, you also offer prevention and safety, anti-rape and sexual assault, how to manage that. Well, we don't manage that. We just prepare ourselves how to.
I also teach classes to people who are social workers or psychiatric workers in institutions, because it's important for them to know how to deal with their clients without hurting them. Because sometimes their clients get violent and they need to be able to protect themselves without hurting their clients.
Absolutely.
You can't have a client who's sort of losing it. You can't kick them in the nuts.
Right.
You're gonna get fired if you do that.
Right. It's a different language.
Yeah. So we do a lot of stuff with trying to using. I mean, a lot of times they'll grab you or they'll shake you or they'll choke you or whatever, and to just rest your arms on them, it gives them your weight. But that they don't realize that, and just say, what's going on? Tell me what you need. Shall we have a cup of coffee? Shall we sit down and have a cup of tea? Why don't you tell me what? And sort of to try and
ground them,
try and change the energy of the situation.
Wow, it's also a de-escalating tactic, or a tool to de-escalate. Wow, and you also offer a course on safety in the workplace?
Yes. Because so many people are afraid to speak up at work because they're afraid they'll lose their job. And for a while, there used to be like how do you say it in English? A person of trust who you could go to and say if something was going on in your at your work with a superior. a superior in terms of their job, not a superior in terms of how they are in the world or who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's stuff. I mean, one of the biggest problems people have is that they don't say anything until they explode.
Right.
So it'll happen 3 or 4 or 5 times, and then they'll explode, and the other person's like, "What? Huh? I've always acted like this. What are you talking about?" So one of the things that we work on is immediately, if something is uncomfortable, say something, but you can say it you can be nice about it because nothing really has happened yet. You can just say, "I don't know how it is in your culture or in your whatever, but I don't like it when people come that close to me. I don't like when people touch me who I don't really know. And I don't like it when people touch me if I haven't given them permission or whatever." And it's a
to express a boundary.
Other person, exactly. And the other person generally will go, "Oh, I'm really sorry. I didn't realize that. I do that all the time, and I never thought about it. I'll be thinking about it now." And so before it's, "Stop touching me. I don't even know you," or whatever. You're just having a conversation, and the speaking up right away instead of waiting till it becomes an issue is really important part of communication.
Absolutely.
And that especially at work, because somebody new will come to work, and we all know, well, I don't know if we still all practice it anymore, but we used to always practice some guy hanging over you at your work, showing you something on the computer, and then resting their arm, and their arm falls on your breast, and and it's supposedly an accident, but they got their hand on your breast, or they put their hand on your shoulder, but you don't want to be touched by them. You don't even know them, and so a lot of it's cultural, a lot of it's interpersonal, and it's you just never know. I was at a anti-racism conference one time here in the city I live in, and on one side of the table was all Dutch people, and on my side of the table were all people who immigrants, and it was really funny because while we were talking to each other, we were touching each other arms and whatever. And on the other side, they were just sitting like this and saying whatever they were saying and not touching. And one of the people from the other side of the table said, "I'm so glad I'm on this side of the table. I would have gone nuts if you all would have been touching me like that the whole time." And I said, "Well, and we talked about how it's very easy to just say, 'Don't touch me.'" And we turned it into that, setting boundaries. And I said, but also, a lot of times you can feel it when somebody doesn't want you to touch them, and you just don't. But we were all, from the Middle East, and from Spain, and,
absolutely.
We were all from ethnic groups that are touchy.
It's very important. I mean, everyone is different, and we need to understand. We need to have the words, plan the words in our mouths. What am I going to do if this happens again? Even if sometimes people miss the opportunity to speak up the first time. And sometimes when I think about, if that happens again, I think I might say something. What will I say? And it might even prevent the blow up on the set, as well.
Absolutely. I mean, it's easy to go, ho, wait a minute. I wanted to talk to you about something, and I forgot. But now it's happening again, so it's a perfect opportunity for me to talk to you about it.
Right.
And so you're going, stop. You're bringing your hands up, stop. But but your voice is, wait. I wanted to talk to you about something. So it's not like, stop.
Right.
No.
Right. It's commensurate.
We also practice, and we also need to be able to do.
Right.
But we don't have to necessarily do that first. We can sometimes say, wait. I want to talk to you about something first.
Right. So Wendi, before we end off the podcast, I just wanted to ask you 1 or 2 last quick questions. What is it that you dream about doing that you haven't done yet?
Say that again.
What is it that you dream about doing that you haven't done yet? Because you've accomplished so much, and
I don't really, I just do whatever I want to do. I mean, I don't really plan it. It's just like, I got this opportunity. Okay, cool.
They need you there, so you go.
Yeah, I never really expected to have the bond that I have with Israel.
Mhm.
And I have it because Judith and Jill came to special training and I met them and they brought me to Israel. And now I love Israel.
Mhm.
And,
Wonderful.
and
Well,
actually, a lot of my social life on Zoom is with people in Israel.
that's great. That's
Because
great.
I do a couple of movies and I do a couple of tours. And yeah, so.
That's great. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on to the show. And maybe
Thank
you'll
you.
just share with us the best way to get involved and what's available out there where if people want to learn more about ESD and about you.
Sure. Well, I have a website, Wendy with a small W, and my name is with an I, not a Y,
Mhm.
-Dragonfire, like it sounds, .com. And so people can go there. But also probably the most important reference you could have is the ESD Global website, because they have a whole list of self-defense instructors all over the world.
Right.
So you can find somebody in your area. But Google, I mean, Google is one of the best things that ever was invented for putting people in, for helping people find what they need.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you to Wendi Dragonfire. Thank you to our listeners. We would love to hear from our listeners of the Change the Culture podcast. So you can email me, Annie.Orenstein@mypower.co.il. That's mypwr.co.il. And as well as you're welcome to pop over to the Change the Culture Facebook group and share your thoughts, questions, and success stories with us. And you can catch up. Feel free to catch up. We had on the show Judith Siddickman, the CEO of My Power, and Samantha Waterman, and we look forward to having many more professionals in the field of ESD around the world. So we want you to be part of the conversation and part of the solution. And again, thank you, Wendi.
Thank you. And for people who don't know it, I have a really lot of relatives who are Orensteins. This isn't one of them.
Right.
I wish you was.
I wish we were related to. Thank you. I maybe
Many of them live in Israel, in fact.
Really? So we're gonna do the after show party. We'll talk more. We'll figure that out. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.